Welcome to part 2 in the search for Anthony Ojeda, who was wanted for the murder of a 6-week-old child known in the media as Baby Eli. In part 1, you heard how Baby Eli ingested methamphetamine while in Ojeda's care. When Baby Eli started to show signs that something was very wrong, Ojeda failed to call 911. Ojeda was indicted for second-degree murder, and after missing a court appearance, he and his husband Neil Garzon fled to Mexico. He disappeared for a while, but then the Marshals, Cohoes PD, and the Mexican authorities tracked him down. And that should have been the end of this manhunt. Turns out it's not so easy to get Mexico to hand over one of its citizens to be tried in the U.S. for murder. Part 2 begins as the Marshals realize the extradition process is slowing to a crawl. I'm Chris Godsick, and this is Chasing Evil.
So once they were located in Mexico, that was June of 22. Now that we're on,
right?
Next step was, okay, immediately let's get a provisional arrest warrant. Yeah, I figured maybe a couple weeks. I don't think it's going to be the next day. We didn't get the provisional warrant till January of 2024. So we're at 2 years now, a little less than 2 years of when they were located.
Just to restate it, He is found. There is excitement.
Yeah.
You know where he is now for the next 12 hours.
Yeah.
2 years go by.
Pretty much, just shy of 2 years. Yeah. Even though he, killed a baby, he is a Mexican citizen. He's dual, but he's Mexican citizen. You need to show intent that you intentionally killed the child. That's what Mexico wants to see if they're going to give us one of theirs. The problem with this one from the beginning is when you're trying to get the provisional arrest warrant, now you have to work with the local DA and basically they want to see, what do you have? All your evidence. Let me see. So we can make sure that this fits and this is something that we can pursue.
Right.
Now, I don't want to blame the DA's office, but they want to keep the integrity of their case because of a potential trial.
Right.
So the original stuff they sent, the paperwork, left a lot of details out. And, granted, they didn't want stuff getting out because they wanted to protect the integrity of their trial.
Right.
So it looked just like kind of they explained in the beginning that, maybe it was by accident. The baby somehow got a hold of the meth on its own, even though we knew it wasn't the case. The baby, motor functions, this baby's not opening up a bag of meth. So there was stuff left out.
The baby isn't even gripping anything yet.
Exactly. Cohoes did some search warrants on their computers, Neil's, Garzon's, and Ojeda's. And one of them was they Googled what happens if you blow meth in a baby's face. Something like that. I don't know the exact wording.
Right.
But that was left out of the paperwork sent to, the lawyers on the international side. So it took months of that to get situated and figured out. Plus, they needed a lot of the interviews that Cohoes PD did, especially with the state police. They needed those transcribed and or translated, some of them. So there was a lot of red tape. I do think there was a lot of delays that should have never happened. That's why I said I was a huge thorn where I would send emails saying, hey, so-and-so sent an email 3 weeks ago and it has not been responded to. Please respond today.
Right.
So I tried to keep up as much as I could on keeping the ball rolling. But there were little hiccups.
I don't think people can comprehend when you say red tape that it just doesn't seem possible that it would take 2 years to catch someone who had murdered a 6-week-old. Again, another thing that defies logic or one's imagination.
If I could just interject on that topic. So obviously, same as with the Marshals, we have other things going on all the time, right?
Right.
It's not like everything takes a pause for the time frame that this is going on, but it's always there in the back of your mind. And Detective Green, who was working with Anthony and the Marshals and was helping a lot with the paperwork that DOJ needed and then the Mexican authorities on their side needed, he'd come up and he'd give me the updates. And it's like a roller coaster ride. Like you had said perfectly before, like they got eyes on him, they know where he is, and all of a sudden your level is up here and you're thinking this is going to be soon. And then months go by and you hear, well, they need the additional information. You haven't proven it was intentional. And it goes back down again as to, okay, now we got to file a lot of paperwork. Then it comes back up again and down. And for 2 year period, that he was located for that period. And I'm sure the marshals feel the same way. It's nothing but a roller coaster ride when you hear, oh no, they kicked him back again. We need to do more. We need to translate and transcribe all this material now. And they want additional proof and additional evidence. They won't hand them over. And you just keep thinking you're getting close. And that's where I can't say enough about the Marshal Service. They had to have people watching and monitoring them that whole time. Think of how long that is to be down there, keeping eyes on somebody, just waiting for the red tape and all the paperwork to be done accordingly. I mean, the rest of us are going about doing other things. And again, it kind of stays with you. But hats off to the people that were down there on the Mexican side in these areas that they've already explained were very dangerous, but having to stay with that and make sure that, because if they decide they're going to take off again, maybe go to Ecuador where Neil Garzón is a citizen.
Right.
So I'm kind of like, hey, Anthony, listen, buddy. Word is they want to leave, and they can't ask straight up questions of where, why, and all that. They're just like, oh, okay, just casual conversation.
Right.
Hey, here's a bag of stuff. Hey, we'll be back, next week, next month, whatever. And the guy's like, hey, no, we're planning on, we may not be here. And that's the information I'm getting. I'm like, oh man, it made me shake. It was like, Anthony, get on these folks. And I could see the frustration on the email string. You could almost see Anthony's frustration with the system as he's prodding along almost everybody involved in this wheel.
I'm sure there was some descriptive language used during this process.
I had one of the chiefs at headquarters. She was CC'd on him because she was the one, coordinating all the top 15 stuff. And she called me one day and said, I don't know how you keep your composure on these emails. Because, I would try and be as polite as I could, but,
right.
I also stern. But yeah, I mean, we weren't even close to getting it yet. And Sal, you remember you called me. The brother, because Ojeda's got, I think he had 2 or 3 brothers in Mexico. The brother stole from him and robbed from Ojeda, and that's when they were like, they were pretty much going to pack up and go. They didn't want to stay there anymore because I think the brother stole their cell phone and a bunch of money.
Yeah, I think that was like a November, early mid-November. I can't remember the exact, but it was November because it was right before Christmas around that year, and I'm thinking, they're going to take off. At some point, I guess Anthony received a notice or an email or something, and he called me, hey, Sal, it looks like it's going to get filed. It looks like, Main Justice, DOJ, Washington's going to send it. They're just going to, hey, if it gets approved, it gets approved. Let's cross their fingers. And shortly after that, it got approved.
The warrant's been approved, and now you can actually go make an arrest.
So now I'm sitting at the Pacific Southwest Regional Fugitive Task Force here in LA, which is my home office. And the chief is like, hey, Sal, can you come back? The New York guys are flying in. So can you go pick Ojeda and Garzón up? And I said, Chief, my bags are packed. Let's go make this happen. Everybody lands. We start this manhunt, which sure as planned, never works out the way it should.
Right.
Nope, not at all.
The plan is we're going to meet with our counterparts. They have a Mexican warrant to pick up Ojeda. Perfect. They're pretty much 100%. They're going to just go set up, do their thing, pick them up, and then we're all going to go to dinner that night and fly out. And then we'll wait for the extradition. Well, sure as daylight, they go out there, they set up, nothing. Then we get the call, hey guys, let's all meet up. And I'm thinking, this isn't good. Your guy isn't there anymore. And,
that's just a gut punch.
Yes, but I'm thinking, well, it's not over yet. We have a few days on the ground to see what we can come up with. For the next 48 hours, with almost little to no sleep, we were operational. Luckily, they had not delivered a little care package to the address, and at that point, they pulled the folks that were helping, they put them aside. They just want federal agents working this case now. The agents played the part delivering this last care package.
Right.
Because they had told the mom, this is going to be probably your last care package when we were 1 or 2. Mom was like, you know what, I don't need any more. So they would try to track down mom. Of course, mom doesn't show up, and it's just a waiting game. Mom finally shows up. She's asking, who are you guys? What happened to the last guy?
Right.
And so they're trying to, smooth out the conversation, not trying to ask directly, where's your son? And she pretty much brings it all up. she divulges everything. Mom, I'm sorry. I've had to work late. I'm under a lot of stress. My son, my son's, got into a fight, and, I even got hurt, and, they knocked my son out, and, nobody's talking to anybody. At that point, the agent said, well, your son wanted to apply for some of this relief also. So let us know, if you can track down Anthony Ojeda, and she said, oh, Anthony, I'm not talking to him, but I'm gonna have to call his brother, and maybe he can get a hold of him. And right. I don't know. I don't want to be involved. So all this conversation's going on. I'm thinking they're gone. That these guys are gone.
Right.
So the agents report back to us. We go back. We have a late night dinner, and they're just briefing us up on this, and they're just saying we're gonna go back out. Second day in the morning, they meet with mom, and one of the female agents looks over and sees a message with brother, and there's what looks like a phone number, and the mom says, I think my son was able to get a hold of Anthony. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Right.
And agent pretty much tells her, hey, look, if you get a hold of your son, give him our number. His application got approved for little care packages. So she was able to get kind of a partial phone number. Right. There. The agent was like, you know what? It's going to take time for us to work this case. We have to work it almost like we're just fresh with this guy's partial information. The Interpol Mexico agents, federal agents, they were pretty good because they started just piecing whatever they had on Garzón, and now they're tying in their investigation, and they're kind of briefing me up. And I'm just saying, hey, look, even if we find Garzón, we need to catch Ojeda. Ojeda's primary. I believe that night is when we had kind of leads in this area of Nezahualcóyotl, which was another interesting area of operations. Remember that one-eyed guy that opened the gate for us there in the middle of the night, like at 3 a.m, 2, 3 a.m. And
do you ever see those like narco movies or the drug movies where like they go in the bad neighborhood and someone has to like open a gate, or there's someone on the roof that's like clapping to alert the town? This is literally when Sal says where we were. When we rolled into there, this guy like limping with one eye like opened this gate to let us into town, and I'm like, where are we? Where are you taking us? It was pretty crazy, pretty intense.
Right.
We're combing this area up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down, and we called it a night. It was already like 2, 3 a.m. We all go back to our hotels. It's going to be a long day tomorrow, explaining everything that we've done. And it's going to be a long plane ride home for me, and I'm sure the guys from New York.
Right.
And the female agent that was working there, and I always, give her credit because she pieced together the address for Garzón, and we were 1 block away from his address when we called it. So, which wouldn't have meant much because we'd have had to break off anyway. We couldn't sit stagnant surveillance in that area anyway. Right. So static surveillance in that neighborhood would have been impossible. So we call it a night, and we follow up the next morning. And chief said, "Hey, take the AM, recharge your batteries, And Stu and I did a Marine Corps run, I believe. Stu, we were doing our Marine Corps mile in the morning, and we get a call saying, "Hey, Interpol's trying to get a hold of you," and I'm thinking like, all right, like, hey Stu, what's going on? So Stu's like, "Hey Sal, they're trying to get a hold of us. And check your phone." I'm like, "Oh."
That was me. Remember, I'm not a runner, so I stayed at the hotel. And Chief called me, Roberto, and he's like, "Hey, where you guys at?" He's like, "I'm trying to get hold of Sal." And I'm like, "Those crazy guys are on a run right now. I don't know why, but they decided to go for a nice jog." He goes, "Well, get him back because Ojeda just called Interpol and he wants to get his services or whatever that, he was trying to get.
His care package."
Yeah. So
right.
I'm in my room, like going nuts. Like, so I'm blowing up their phones. They luckily answer, and I'm like, "Where are you guys?" They're like, "Oh, we're on a jog." I'm like, "Well, how far are you?" I don't know if you guys were a mile away or not still yet, but I told them what happened. They're like, "All right, we're turn around." So they they beat feet pretty quick and they got back to the hotel.
Yeah, we got ready, shored up, met with the Interpol guys and said, hey, we set up a meeting to see if Ojeda will show up at a location not too far away from our station. We'll see. Sure as daylight, the Interpol folks call us and say, hey, your guy's in custody. And I look at Anthony and say, Anthony, guess what? And he's not like, he just has this look of joy finally. And you could just see this just release of just, you're kidding, Sal. You're like, no, Sal, tell me the truth. And I'm like, no, he's in custody, but they're taking him down and to the medical at the airport.
You know, Stu, now that you can go back to the United States with showing something for your effort.
I'll tell you right now, I was still suspicious, man. I'm like, is this the brother? Is this like is this 100% our guy? And I'm like, prove it, right? I'm still in the prove it mode, right? Like I'm taking a look at him. I'm like, I want to know what he has on him. And like, I'm staring at like scars on his face and do they match the photos that we have? And he did change. That's the bottom line is. And I do think it was because he lived a rough life for those couple of years on the run, looking over his shoulder. And so his physical appearance had changed. He had aged and he had his New York State ID, New York State driver's license on him. And a Mexican ID.
He didn't try to say that you got the wrong guy and try to get out of it that way.
No, like Stu said, he definitely aged. Like he didn't try to disguise himself. He just, for 4 years, he was on the run. He did not look the same at all. Like Stu and I looked at each other and we opened the car door and we're like, is this him? But he had the ID and then he did say, he's like, yeah, I'm wanted out of New York. He said, never changed, never tried to deny it.
So let me add a little legality clarification. As soon as Ojeda presents a Mexican ID, we need a formal extradition and you need to sort that out. However, Garzón, being that he was born in a secondary country, not Mexico, was subject to deportation. That is on the case of Garzón, which Garzón, it just so happened, Robert had gotten approval for Garzón to be removed back to his country via a stop in the U.S. He needs to go back to the original country he entered from. So Robert called me saying, hey, guess what? We're sending the cavalry for Garzón. We need you to go back in your car and go back to that little town with the one-eyed guy and go get Garzón. Pack it up now. Once again, ups and downs of emotions.
Sure.
Literally 8 hours earlier, completely given up on this to now we have one. Now we're going to go back out, completely authorized, certified for a different type of procedure for Garzón. And now we have the local authorities. Once again, GTAC Sal, we jump on the armored Toyota and here we go bouncing around all over the place, hitting potholes and whatnot.
Right.
We get there, we meet up with the state guys. They bring a few more for support. A Suburban shows up. You see like 2 or 3 female Mexico State police officers. And they're like, okay, just to let you know, we already have, surveillance and there's no movement. Literally, we show up within 15 minutes. They're like, the door's opening, positive ID. He's holding a little kid's hand. He looked like a 6-7-year-old. And they walk away from the address. At that point, we all set up. One of the females agents get off on foot. They follow him to a marketplace. They're telling him, don't do anything. No action. And we're pretty much set back down the street, all this. And we're listening to some of the radio traffic. And they turn around, they walk back to the address where they came out of, and which once again, it's literally 2 blocks away from where we were several nights back. So we were so close, right?
Right.
Just before they make entry, agents get off, they detain him. The little kid runs into the house. They pull Garzón over to one of the patrol cars, and it is within seconds that 3 or 4 women just start coming out of all directions. Now they're pulling on the agents, the female agents. They're screaming. Why are you taking Garzón? They're trying to stop the arrest.
Right.
They don't understand what's going on.
What did they think was going on? Why were they throwing hands?
Well, they probably thought it was a kidnapping or something.
they were dressed down, the officers, and we were in pickup trucks and stuff. So it probably, it looked maybe like kidnapping. I think one of the officers got hit with a shoe. I think the one girl was swinging a shoe at him when they were trying to put him in the car. So it was pretty hectic.
But anyway, that's one of those where the locals actually went above and beyond for us. And then, if I'm not mistaken, you guys brought him back the following day? Or?
We did. Yeah, he was on the same flight as us.
Okay, put a pin in that for 1 sec. Let me put a pin in that. So, Chief, I don't know what you're doing on the day, and clearly you're not thinking about this every day because it's been 2 years that you've been waiting. What was your response when you found out they're both actually in custody?
And I think that's a very important thing to say. Maybe I'm a little bit greedy in this, but I really wanted to make sure that both of them got caught. Obviously, Ojeda was by far the worst of the two. But in my mind, I was always hoping we could also get Neil Garzone, because we knew he played a role in helping Anthony to flee, and he himself fled. And once Detective Green had filed the charges for hindering prosecution, which was assisting Anthony in his flight, and that being a felony, I knew what the priority was. But when they were able to tell us that they got the both of them, and then they kind of ran down how it would go, how easy it would be to get Neil Garzone back, and that it might take some time with Anthony Ojeda, but at least he was secured and he was locked up down there. It was overwhelming. I can't think of what else was going on that day. I'm sure there was something, but all of that pales in comparison to this news. And I guess I really felt it more for the detectives who were intimately involved in it. Detective Piazza and LeBombard and Detective Green, who were the ones who were there from the very beginning and had to go through the horrible things they saw at the hospital, the autopsy the next day, and then the constant filing of the paperwork and the going back and forth and always wondering, was this ever going to actually happen?
Right.
So the fact that they were able to get to both of them, it was just overwhelming is the closest word I can come to describe what it felt like.
Rob, Matt, how did you guys take the news?
Rob called me on early on to let me know what was going on. And once he called me and told me they had him in custody, I have since retired. So I was at home when I got the call, and it was very emotional. I'm not going to lie to you. It was very emotional. This case was a really tough case that hit, everybody in a small department like this. So when we got kind of closure on that night, when we found out they were both in custody, it was a little bit of a celebration. I might have had a drink or two afterwards, because it was a long 2-year process for this.
Right. So Stu and Anthony, you take Garzone back the next day on a plane.
So we were on the same flight. Mexican immigration officials had custody of Garzone.
Do you talk to him much before the flight? I mean, are you learning anything new? What's his reaction? Does he know what the future has in store for him?
So we don't sit with him on the plane. He's with the immigration officers. But when we land in Atlanta, he has to stay in the jurisdiction that he lands in. So he doesn't come all the way to New York with us. So when we land in Atlanta, we have Atlanta officials. We got, deputy marshals that come to the airport along with, local, I think it was the county that was going to take him, Garzone.
Right.
But when we land, we had time to sit with him. And he didn't talk much. I don't even know if we asked him anything. He kind of knew what was going on, but he didn't say much at all to us.
Okay. And then Ojeda sits for how long before he can get extradited?
5 more months, just about 5 more months. So we get him in late January. Extradition is approved in somewhat mid-June, early June. And then Anthony and one of our task force officers go down in mid-June and take custody of Ojeda, bring him back to the U.S.
So where do they fly to?
We flew into Mexico. We pulled Sal off vacation, off the beach. And Sal met us in Mexico. We spent the night there. And then because this was an extradition and not a deportation, Ojeda can now go straight to New York with us. So it didn't matter if we had a layover. The deportation stuff's different, where wherever we land, he's got to stay in that jurisdiction until he gets a extradition hearing. But
so are you escorting him on the plane, or is that still Mexican authorities?
No, me, Sal, and our TFO were escorting him from the Interpol office in the airport. Once he got brought to Interpol in the airport, from there on, he was with us the entire way.
All right. So you have plenty of time with him.
Absolutely, yeah.
What is that conversation? What information does he reveal? Does he know his future?
He didn't say much. He didn't say anything on the plane. The only he said to us when we were strip searching him out at the Interpol office to get, just to, for security reasons before we got on the plane, he did mention something about being beat up. He wanted out of there. He was glad to be leaving Mexico because something about being beat up in the prison. And there was, he had bug bites and bites all over him. He said that there was a lot of rats and bugs or something. That's literally the only thing he told me the entire trip.
And then eventually Cajos gets their hands on him.
What really happens is, Anthony does a great job of keeping us up to date with everything. And Neil Garzone becomes, in effect, a fugitive in another state at this point, right? Because he's down in Georgia, no different than when we've had to go and get people from states otherwise.
Right.
But they actually bring Anthony back to Albany County Airport, which is our local airport, not too far from here. And like I said, Anthony does a great job of notifying us so that we could take part in that process. And we wait right outside the airport, and they come by in their convoy and bring him down to the federal courthouse building there, where he gets walked in and goes through a short process there before he's brought back to the county jail. And that's when I guess you really know that it's over in terms of him coming back, because I saw you, Chris, roll your eyes when they said it was another 5 months in the Mexican jail.
Yeah.
I can understand exactly what you're saying. You say, good, he's secured now, but you're always left with that small percentage of thought of, okay, but he's still in another country and things do work differently there. And I don't have much knowledge of that, but I'm always like, please, I hope there's not any way that this doesn't go through all the way. But when he touches down in Albany and he gets brought to the Albany County Jail, and you say, okay, he's here, he's right here now, and everybody has done everything they could do to get him back here, you do feel that's when the weight, I think, is really off all the way. I just wanted that perfection of him here and Garzone here, and both of them having to go and be held accountable for this.
Now, let me ask what I think is a stupid question, but actually, given the circumstance and given what had just happened in 2020, was there a possibility that either of them would get bail?
I know my thoughts on it, and I can see Anthony smiling because we talked about it as we did with a lot of the marshals when we were, going over this after the fact. And our thought was this: I couldn't see that happening, and here's why. Because of the publicity this case received, because of the horrendous crime that took place, the only thing left to do would be, now it's in the hands of the DA's office. And I could not imagine the DA's office taking any chances with missing a deadline or, having some other issue pop up. It would be unfathomable, because can you imagine with the coverage? And up here, there was constant news coverage. There was stations that were following this every step of the way through the 4-year process. So I had a lot of confidence that we were done with any of those things happening. And I do think it's why Anthony might have been relieved. I think that he probably feels the jails up here are going to be better for him than the ones in Mexico. And he might have had a thought that, hey, look what I got away with the first time. Maybe I'll be able to try something again. But thankfully, all those things were put to bed, and there was no chance of any of those things happening again.
Did they change the charges on him so that it did not fall within the charges that people were getting bail for?
Well, at this point, too, some things about bail reform is once you've gone and done this, once you've fled out of the country, those are factors that is as messed up as bail reform can be. That at that point, it's a consideration factor. I mean, you got to feel the guy fled the entire country.
Yeah,
you can't.
Oh,
say,
I'm with you.
No,
when I put logic into it, I come up with one conclusion, but that may not reflect the reality of the situation.
And you're right. We all agreed the first time around the manslaughter charge should have been enough, but at this point there was enough weight that wasn't going to happen again, and he wasn't going to be able to get out, and he was going to have to stay there. The charges, and Detective Piazza can clarify this, but the charges changed over time. Obviously, you had the initial charge before you get toxicology, then you have what everybody's comfortable with. It being very difficult though with a 6-week-old, you don't have anybody who can speak about what happened. There was only 2 people, there that know 100% what happened. So at the one point though, when he decided to flee, they did say we can up this to the murder second charge. I believe he was
Okay.
indicted on the murder second, correct, Rob?
Yes. Yep.
So he was indicted on that while he was on the run. When they brought him back, again, in order to secure a rock solid, guilty plea and the accountability in the sentencing, they agreed and he agreed to now do manslaughter first.
Does that show intent?
Yes, because we have depraved indifference for life. Because when we upgraded from manslaughter to murder, that becomes Class B felony.
So the charges were upgraded. And then on October 4th, 2024, not so long ago, Ojeda pled guilty to manslaughter in the first. So correct. Does that show intent? How is manslaughter in the first different than manslaughter in the second, which was the original charge, I think, right?
Correct. The manslaughter first shows that you intended to injure somebody severely enough to harm them severely, but you ended up killing them through your conscious actions and through your intent to cause that severe injury. The difference being in murder, you can say that you intended to kill that person. So there lie the differences. And I think the murder charge was a necessity, again, for the Mexican authorities to really say, now you can take him. And that's what we had to keep filing to show. Right. If you couldn't show that he intended to do that, they weren't going to have him come back. But it's not unusual for now the district attorney's office to say, okay, we did have the murder second, but he's agreeing to plead to a manslaughter first. Let's take what we know we can get and hopefully get the best sentence.
So January 10th comes and you're in the courtroom for Anthony Ojeda's sentencing. Take us through that.
I was very pleased with the judge's decision. Anthony Ojeda got the maximum. The maximum for this charge was 20 years. And for the first time, any of us involved in this case heard on public record what Anthony Ojeda had done that day. When he was being interviewed for probation, which is one of the requirements before someone is sentenced, the judge read aloud to the entire courtroom that Anthony Ojeda admitted he took the baby's pacifier, put it into a bag of methamphetamine, and then put that pacifier in baby Eli's mouth.
What was the reaction in the courtroom?
Well, due to the rules for courtroom decorum, it was pretty quiet, but you could more see on the people's faces that they just couldn't believe that that's exactly how it had transpired, that he had done that intentionally. And the judge described it as absolute evil, and I couldn't disagree with that assessment at all.
Right. And so 20 years plus 5 years probation means on the state level in New York that he'll serve what, do you think?
He'll serve, if he gets good time, 3/4 of that sentence.
Okay.
The judge also made it very clear that he wanted to read into the record. As he stated, he will be long gone from the bench and maybe long gone from this world. But he wanted to make sure that Mr. Ojeda served every second of every minute of every hour of every day, week, month, and year of that sentence. And it was his opinion that when they looked to this as a possible parole case, he wanted them to review that court record and make sure he serves the entire 20-year maximum.
Okay. So there was satisfaction amongst those who were in the court. I mean, obviously, shock as well, but some level of satisfaction.
Yes, we went through the shock of hearing him admit to what he had done,
right,
followed by holding your breath and waiting to hear what the sentence will be. Then you hear it's the 20-year maximum and there's some relief.
And then January 24th comes, Neil Garzon's sentencing, and you were in the courtroom for that.
Yes, I think I had mentioned before that myself and I think most everybody involved in this were a little bit greedy in that we knew Anthony Ojeda was the primary suspect and the worst offender
in
this whole situation, but I really didn't want to see anyone who was involved with it get away. So it was just as important to me to be there for Neil Garzon because he had helped his husband flee the country. There was proof there that he was a part of that. He was aware of what had happened, and he agreed to be part of, an escape plan and a chance to live completely free from accountability. So it was a similar situation. His sentence was obviously going to always be a lot less. But again, the same judge stated that if he could, he would have sentenced him to more. But because he had agreed to the two charges of endangering the welfare of a child, which is a misdemeanor, and attempted hindering prosecution in the first degree, which is a felony, he couldn't sentence him for any more than those two convictions would allow.
Right. And that was 1 to 3 years.
1 to 3 years, and the sentences had to run concurrently. The judge made mention he wishes he could have tacked on the 1 year for the EWOC after and done it consecutively, but it's just not allowed by function of law.
Right. And what determines is if it's 1 or 3?
Well, again, that's a good question. Because his is not the determinate sentence that Ojeda receives, he's again saying that he hopes he serves the maximum.
Right.
At the low end, he could have received just probation, if you could believe that. Technically, he didn't have to be sentenced to any time at all. But the 1 1/3, again, will depend on his behavior in prison, good time, and what the parole board feels like doing when they revisit the case at the first opportunity.
Right.
When we started this podcast, I said this was an all-encompassing case. And I'm not wrong. This was physical and this was mental. There were highs and lows, and because of bureaucratic red tape, it was almost never ending. These people on the podcast today and many others that weren't got justice for Baby Eli. So I want to thank the Cohoes Police Department, Chief Todd Walden. Thanks very much, Chief, for making this happen. Detective Robert Piazza, retired Detective Matt LeBombard, and from the U.S. Marshals, Deputy Commander Stu Smith, Senior Inspector Anthony Logadisi, and Senior Inspector from the Pacific Southwest Regional Fugitive Task Force, Sal Reyes.
I just want to say real quick, I do appreciate you choosing this as one to put out there. I want to say thank you to Sal, who I never met before, but I appreciate everything that you did. Like I said, I got to meet.
Thank you, Sal.
Yeah, thank you.
Got to meet all the marshals all the way up to the marshal, in charge of the whole area. And I can't say enough about the cooperation that took place. It was something I've never seen before. I don't know if there's many other instances where this many agencies and departments up to the federal level, et cetera, worked on this.
I mean, I listen, I want to thank, a lot of people for this, especially the Coast PD, the chief, and the detectives.
I know it was touched on, but I'd like to share it in this fashion. The level of interagency cooperation and collaboration that occurred with this case at the federal, state, local level, and international level, to me, was just amazing. To me, it set the benchmark of how good things can happen. One other thing I'd like to point out, the volume of cases that our partners in Mexico City that they do handle, and Chief Roberto, my hat's off to him. I mean, he made this a priority. He understood the complexity of the case. He understood how to navigate the resources that he had available to him down there and how to best support us. He made it clear that this case was a priority with his own team and with his sphere of influence there in Mexico. And it was extremely impressive to watch. And he played a pivotal role with us achieving this outcome as well, and the team down there.
Thank you all very, very much for the job you do and for telling your story today.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And if you have a moment, this is the part I ask you to please go to Apple or Spotify and give us a 5-star rating and write a glowing review. And, of course, tell your friends about us. It's pretty unusual to have a podcast where you're hearing from the people in law enforcement who are at the tip of the spear. We're just trying to grow this thing so we could really use your help. So thanks very much in advance. And finally, Chasing Evil is produced with the cooperation of the U.S. Marshals Service. It contains interviews with current and retired employees, as well as other persons. Opinions, positions, and views expressed by any of them may not reflect the official views, positions, or policies of the United States Marshals Service. Stay safe, everyone.